Are you ready?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim. With me, as always, is the impeccable Mr. David Fuchs. David,
Not the jacked one like
dude,
like the last
I
episode.
can't pump you up too much. You're already like, you
I know
know,
already, like kind of cocky. I know.
we gotta keep you humble. We gotta keep your
I
head's
know.
gotta
No,
be able
I
to get
agree.
through the door.
I agree. I agree. But anyway, bad attitude. Like we're just talking about good vibes. Part two of the bad attitude series, by the way.
part, part two of the bad attitudes.
Part two of bad attitude. Last time we talked about people wanting to, what they can do to buy a grade or buy a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the topic we're gonna have for now. You came up with it. You brought it to my attention. We talked about it right before we started recording this, and I think it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. This is more subtle. I think that like somebody says to you, "Hey, you should get your CFP." And you go, or somebody says, "If you want to work at this firm, you got to go and get your CFP." Right? And so the question becomes, "Okay, what do I got to do?" And they're like, "Okay, you got to study 300 hours." And you're like, "Okay, got it." And so you start kind of doing it. I'm literally following this study plan, and I'm every time that they have something, I check it off, and I do the next thing, I check it off, do the next thing, I check it off. I go and do a practice test, and I go, I just scored a 54. What the hell just happened? And this is a far more subtle thing, but when you are studying for an exam of this magnitude, you cannot just check things off of a list like, oh, I did 10 minutes of flashcards. Check. I did my 1,000 practice questions. Check. And I think everybody gets in the habit of, if the study plan says you got to do 1,000 practice questions, I'll do 1,500 just so I'm doing one and a half times more than I should, and therefore I should pass. And you and
Yeah,
I both know, David, that just doing the quantity doesn't necessarily get you there. And just checking things off of a list doesn't mean that you're actually doing it with intention, and doesn't mean that you're actually learning jack shit. And that is the key to this entire process, is that you have to commit to the process from the beginning. And
yeah,
and if you're just going, well, I can put 45 minutes of flashcards here on my commute, and I have this spare 30 minutes here, so I can do this here and this here, that's never going to work. In fact, I have a student who's taking the Series 24, and we've literally had this conversation 3 or 4 times. He's like, I'm so overwhelmed by my job and my family. And he's like, well, I was like, okay, Frank, you got to do your flashcards. And he's like, okay. And so he tries to put it in this little sliver of time where he's like, okay, I'll do this here. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to be on a plane, but they don't have Wi-Fi on the plane. Now I'm screwed. And I'm like, you can't just find the empty space in your calendar and just start to fill it with CFP like you're checking it off, like you're going to the car wash or going to pick up chicken at the grocery store. It's not the way this works.
no, I would say this is the quintessential conversation where you'd say it's quality over quantity. A lot of people
100%.
say, see if he recommends. I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago about some, the classic, I did 300 hours. Like, how much more was I supposed to do? Well, it's like, well, what did you do with those 300 hours? I know the CFP will sit there and say, what do they require, or what do they
I think they
recommend?
recommend
Like
250.
150,
250.
250. Okay, so 250. So people are like, yeah, so 250. I mapped it out, and this is how I'm gonna get to 250. And each day you get, oh, I'm gonna read this chapter, I'm gonna do that quiz. Well, it's like, all right, what did you read? Like, did you comprehend it? If you didn't, did you go back and read it, or did you like mindlessly read the paragraphs? When you did the quizzes, how did you do? Did you review them after? Did you review the right ones and the wrong ones that you did? So it's like, not just, and this is was my problem the first time, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna, I know he passes a lot of people, but the I used Danko the first time, and Danko does this thing where he gives you the he gives you his books, he gives you his quizzes, he says, do this. This is the roadmap. This is when you're going to take your mock exam. This is what the grades that you're going to need to get. And if you do all this, you're he doesn't guarantee a pass, obviously, nobody does, but you're thinking that you're going to be in a really good position to do it. There's nothing in there that says, well, how did you spend your time when you were doing these tests, or were you just checking off the boxes? Personally, and I'm a complete guilty of this, I just went there and was just looking to check off all the boxes because he said, do this, and this, in this, and this time frame, and you should be in a good position. I thought that would be enough. It clearly wasn't. So when we say don't just check off the boxes, that's an example of where it wouldn't work.
Dude, I'm so happy you brought that up because somebody actually said that to me. They didn't use Brett's program, but they used somebody else's program. And they came to me and they said the same exact thing. Like, I got a couple of books before there was some sort of a live review. They went in, they did everything that they were supposed to do. I did all the reading. I said, okay, great. Well, like, how did you retain the information? They're like, what do you mean? I was like, how did you turn what you read into actual retention? How did you apply it? Well, I did the couple of practice quizzes and I did well on those, so I thought I was okay. Like, what what planet are we on here, guys? Like, what are we doing? Like, you guys think you're gonna take 170 question exam and you think that you're just gonna, like, it's gonna magically come together? Like, that takes time, that takes effort, that takes actual work of getting your hands dirty. You can't check this off. Like, this isn't like, again, studying for the CFP is not Postmates. It's not boom, boom, boom. I put it into my phone and, 45 minutes later, the food shows up at my doorstep. I don't have to do jack shit except check some boxes off. This takes hard work. It takes commitment. It takes a certain level of maturity because you got to realize where your limitations are and what you got to work harder at. And it takes you being very self aware. And if you don't do that stuff and you just, look, I did it. I did it. Look, I did it. And shit, even when you do that stuff around your house, it's the same thing. Right. And, like, if you're trying to just do things to check it off a box, well, great. I can clean up my entire counter by putting it all in my arms and throwing it into a closet. I didn't clean up my house. I just cleaned up one mess by making another. So the way it appears, like, and if you're trying to do that just to check things off of a list and willing to sacrifice and do it at any quality, you will pay for it. And the thing is that that check doesn't come until 2 weeks before the exam when it's too late.
What do you mean that check doesn't come?
Well, you got to pay for those consequences, David, and those consequences come 2 weeks. I'm checking the boxes. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Go to take a couple and again, at first you're like, oh, like my scores will improve. And then that 2 weeks out, you're sitting there and you're still scoring in the 40s and 50s, and you're going, uh-oh. Uh-oh. You're gonna pay for it, and that's exactly when you're gonna start to pay for it.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I mean, I was a complete, and when we talked about it a few weeks ago, where it was almost like it seemed to, I forgot what the topic of the conversation was. I think it was like when it was, you tried to keep it too simple or you tried to keep it simple and you kept it too simple, meaning like you just went through the motions and just did stuff just to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the same exact concept, same exact consequences. It's gonna be the same result. This is not like do this, and this, and all of a sudden the result's gonna be you're gonna pass. You have to put. Oh, it's almost like you can't just go through it with on autopilot. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go through it with enthusiasm, excitement, and passion and dedication. You have
Well,
to add that in.
but let me ask you this. So all of us want a roadmap, right? And I'm with it, right? I draw out these roadmaps for people every day. What is, do you think that having a roadmap turns off your mindfulness, I guess, maybe to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, probably because if you put it take if you yeah, yes and no. Because I think if you have a roadmap, that's kind of like, oh, this is what I have to do. I think you have to take a roadmap and combine it with, and this is how I'm going to approach it from a mental standpoint.
Hmm.
Not just, okay, Joe said I have to do this, this, and this for homework. Like I always tell people when they're, I speak to some prospective students or candidates that you end up tutoring. And I always tell them, like, listen, like Joe, I would say one of the best things that Joe provides you with is structure and a plan. You're going to always be having something to do, but don't take that for granted. You also need to put in the dedication and the enthusiasm and passion on your side. It can't just be Joe gave us this homework. I did the 10 questions. Let's see how I did when we meet on Monday when I find out if I got these right or wrong. It's like we used to do the homework. I always tell people like you have to put in the work outside of class. It's not just going to Joe, hearing what he has to say, and then doing his homework. Like when you used to give us homework or you used to give us stuff to do, I'd be like, I'd do the homework and then I would review with my partners that were also in the class together, and then we'd make sure that we all did it right and understood it before we got to class, not wait until we get to class so you can tell us the answers.
Right.
So we went above and beyond. That's not just checking off the box. That's checking off the box and then some.
Right. But that's not going above and beyond. That's actually doing it with intention. Now, I know as a student because the mindset is I'm in high school or I'm in college. So if I wrote out an answer, I went above and beyond what the teacher expected. And that's what we're programmed here in the United States to do. That's not going above and beyond for this test. Yes, in a high school or college setting, that is absolutely going above and beyond. You're going to get an A plus plus for effort. I'm not a professor and this is not a college course. And so that above and beyond is now the expectation because you have to get to a level of understanding that is in your own words and that you can interpret. And if you're not putting the effort in on the homework that is getting to that level, and David, when did you succeed? When you started getting to that point,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Like I said, like my roadmaps, I would put my roadmap up there being one of the best in the business. It's
Totally.
it's simple, but it still hits all the points. I think it does a good job of kind of making sure that it's not too much and not too little and kind of striking that balance. However, with that being said, my roadmap is only as good as what somebody does with it. Everybody lays out a roadmap. I think I do probably the best job of it. However, the reason why it works so well is you use the crap out of it. Some of the people
Yeah.
in this last class, they went and they worked at it. If you're going to do my homework and you're doing an open answer and you write out one sentence or you write out just the answer in there, where's the learning? How do I know how you're getting to your answer? So if you're not embarking in some shape or form on that type of a journey where you're actually putting in the proper effort, remember, there's no A's and B's in a review class. I don't care. There's no extra credit. You're not gonna, there's no valedictorian of our class. We want to get you prepared, and the only way that we do that is we foster it by learning. So
Yeah.
if you're coming in and your goal is to get everything done like it's some sort of task list, you're going to quickly find out that yes, you're going to do a lot of work, but the needle's not really going to move. Sitting there, being uncomfortable, doing what David said, the enthusiasm, the passion of actually trying to learn the material and discussing it out loud and bringing some level of your own understanding to the table, that's what's important.
Yep.
So, with that being said, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, with any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to David or myself, and we will see you guys on the next episode.